When you hear the word Spartan, what pops into your head? For most of us, it's that stone-faced warrior, right? Super disciplined, basically a living weapon, straight out of the movie 300. It's this image of just pure hardcore military might. But what if I told you that iconic image is only half the story? What if the real story of Sparta isn't about a society that was always a military machine, but one that chose to become one?
Yeah, the Sparta we all think we know, that ultimate warrior state. It wasn't born that way, not even close. In fact, it was forged in the fire of a crisis so deep, so profound, it forced them to completely reinvent their entire society. So let's peel back the layers of the myth and ask the real question: what was Sparta before it became Sparta?
You are not going to believe this, but this is how you could have described early Sparta: a dandy, romantic gentleman. I mean, seriously, can you even imagine? That is a world away from the stoic, shield-biting warriors of legend. They were the trendsetters of their time.
And just look at this. This was Sparta's golden age. We're talking renowned poets, famous musicians, incredibly talented sculptors. Their pottery was top tier, a sign of amazing craftsmanship. Their social life was vibrant, and get this, joyful. This wasn't some military barracks. It was a thriving, artistic, cultural hub.
Okay, so you're probably asking, how could they afford all this art and leisure time? Well, that's where the story takes a turn, because this entire golden age was built on a very dark foundation: conquest. You see, Sparta was in a good spot, but their neighbors, the Messenians, had even better, more fertile land, and Sparta wanted it.
And this is how it all went down. The First Messenian War was this brutal 20-year-long campaign. Sparta eventually won, they seized all that amazing land, and they enslaved the entire Messenian population. These enslaved people, called helots, did all the work, which freed up the Spartans to write poetry and play music. But, a paradise built on oppression, it's basically a ticking time bomb. And a few decades later, it absolutely exploded in the Second Messenian War, a massive, desperate, and bloody slave revolt.
And this, right here, this is the crucial difference. The first war was about greed, pure and simple. It was a war of conquest, a choice. But that second war, that was something else entirely. That was a war for survival. The Helots rose up with so much fury that they threatened to literally wipe Sparta off the map. This wasn't some foreign war anymore. This was a fight for their very existence, on their own soil.
15. That's how many years the Second Messenian War raged on. 15 years. Just try to imagine that. An entire generation growing up knowing nothing but constant, brutal warfare. It was a grinding, terrifying struggle that pushed their entire society to the absolute breaking point.
The cost was just catastrophic. The fighting was so relentless that pretty much every single able-bodied Spartan man was either killed or stuck on the front lines for years. It got so bad that back home, in the city of Sparta itself, the only people left were women, children, and the slaves who hadn't revolted. Society was on the verge of complete collapse.
So after 15 agonizing years, they managed to put the rebellion down. They won, but they were shaken to their absolute core. They had stared into the abyss and come terrifyingly close to being completely annihilated. And so the entire Spartan elite had to confront one single haunting question: how do we make sure this never, ever happens again?
And this led to a great debate, a fundamental argument that would decide the fate of their nation. You basically had two sides. The doves who argued, hey, maybe this happened because our rule is too cruel. The solution is to be more humane, grant some freedoms, ease the pressure. And then you had the hawks. Their take was the complete opposite. The problem wasn't that they were too cruel, it was that they weren't cruel enough. Their solution? Total, brutal, absolute control.
And the hawks won. In what has to be one of history's most chilling decisions, the Spartan leadership concluded that their near destruction was a result of being too soft. Their beautiful culture, their art, their leisure, they saw it all as a weakness that had almost got them all killed.
So they drew up a blueprint for a new society. Step 1, purge the old ways. Systematically abandon the art, the poetry, all the comforts. Step 2, re-engineer their entire civilization. Every aspect of life, from birth to death, would be designed for one thing: military control. And Step 3, forge a true warrior state, a nation dedicated to a single purpose: creating the perfect soldier.
This quote from one of our sources just nails it. Thinking determines the way out, vision creates the gap. This transformation wasn't an accident. It didn't just happen to them. It was a conscious, deliberate, ideological choice. Their thinking about the problem determined their radical solution.
And it was this new, brutal vision that created the massive gap between the artistic Sparta of the past and the military machine of the future.
This total transformation, this deliberate destruction of one culture to build another from its ashes, it came to be known as the Lycurgus Reforms. This whole set of laws and institutions was the engine that systematically turned that dandy, romantic gentleman into the hardened, legendary Spartan warrior.
So, in the end, it was one decision born from the trauma of a nearly fatal slave revolt that created the Sparta we all recognize. They chose fear over freedom, control over culture, the spear over the lyre. But that leaves us with one final, burning question. What did it actually mean to live in this new, brutal society? What did that transformation really look like for the people on the ground, day to day?